Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Abrar Al-Heeti of CNET is here as my guest co-host. Abrar brings a great story to the table. It's all about streaming services and how they keep raising the prices. Then my story of the week is about how Amazon losing out on that Roomba acquisition is actually bad news for Roomba. What does the future of robotic vacuuming look like? And what role did Roomba/iRobot play in the start of the robotic vacuum craze? Afterwards, we have an interview with Stein of CNET, who joins us wearing the Apple Vision Pro to talk about the Apple Vision Pro. And we round things out with a conversation with Albergotti of Semafor, who talks about data centers at the edge. And I mean truly at the edge, in the middle of nowhere. Fascinating conversations. All of that is coming up on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 322, recorded Thursday, February 1st, 2024. The rising costs of streaming services.
Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club TWiT. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows, plus membership in the Club TWiT Discord, a great clubhouse for TWiT listeners. And finally, the TWiT Plus feed with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. And thanks for your support.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am your host, Mikah Sargent, and I am excited to say that we have our next regular guest co-host joining us today. It is CNET's Abrar Al-Heeti. Welcome to the show, Abrar.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm really, really thrilled to be doing this.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you. I reached out and told you kind of about the idea at the end of last year, kind of leading into this year. And so it's great to have you on the show, joining Amanda Silberling of TechCrunch, who will be with us next week. We're getting a great cast of folks for Tech News Weekly, and it really, I'm really, really pleased. So, as I mentioned to all of you who listen to the show, the way that this works is we will start off with our stories of the week. We'll say goodbye to our wonderful guest co-host, and I will carry out some interviews in the latter half of the show. So without further ado, Abrar, please tell us, what story of the week did you bring to the table?
Yes, I wanted to talk about the ridiculously constantly rising cost of streaming. And the more timely element here is that Amazon Prime Video this week just rolled out ads. And if you don't want ads, you'll have to pay an extra $3 a month, which you could dismiss as like, okay, it's a few extra bucks. What's the big deal? But it is a big deal because we already pay so much money for streaming subscriptions. So Amazon Prime costs $15 a month or about $140 annually. And with that, you're supposed to have free streaming. And that's one of the perks of it. But now you have to add another monthly cost. And this is just something I've been thinking a lot about because ads have become such a staple of streaming these days. These ad-supported tiers are things that these companies are really leaning on because they need to make money, right? That's the pressure that they've been facing over the last couple of years, especially. It's no longer about getting new subscribers. It's about making money. And so these ad-supported tiers are great because they're still getting subscription money from you, but then they're getting money from, these advertisements. And so we're seeing it everywhere. And then, to kind of supplement this, the ads coming to Amazon Prime Video, we also just found out yesterday that Disney and Disney Plus and Hulu and ESPN Plus will now be cracking down on password sharing. And that's the other trend that we've seen. And so it's all because of Netflix. So thank you, Netflix, so much for really setting that precedent. But it just makes me think about the fatigue, because I have sat through, my subscriptions and thought, okay, how often do I actually watch something like Apple TV Plus? I canceled that pretty quickly just because it's something I only watch like for Severance, right? But now I'm thinking Netflix. Do I really need to have Netflix? Is it something that I watch often enough? And the answer is no. And so now I'm just kind of thinking through all these subscriptions. And so I wonder if what your thoughts are on that, because have you also been kind of combing through your own subscriptions and figuring out what to get rid of?
Yeah, so I have to tell you, it was kind of interesting. This morning I woke up and I looked at my phone and I saw this more than $100 charge from Amazon. I thought, did I wake up last night and order something and I don't remember what it is? And I went to my orders and I wasn't seeing anything there. And then I realized, oh, that's my Amazon Prime subscription coming through. January is when mine renews. Fine. I use Amazon Prime for the delivery and everything else and occasionally Prime stuff. But overall, that subscription is valuable to me just for the delivery stuff that it provides. So when it comes to Amazon Prime specifically, I'm not as perturbed by this, but I have to tell you, I am so allergic to ads, just so allergic to ads. And I say that as someone who, we do host Red ads on this show and many of the shows on the network. And there's something, this is not just me, but this is, it genuinely, it does feel different. When I'm listening to a podcast and an ad is, comes in from the person who is hosting the show, that doesn't give this same twinge in my brain. But anytime I'm hanging out with friends and they're playing, that soft music in the background, and then suddenly it cuts to, and if you'd like to buy 3 of these special little round balls that you can step on to strengthen your foot muscles, well, you like, what? And I literally will turn to my friends and be like, can I just Venmo, PayPal, Cash App you some money to get you a subscription? Because I cannot do these ads. And we had Hulu with ads for a while, and then we were watching something that we wanted to watch regularly, and I said, look, my partner was paying for this subscription itself, and I said, I will pay the rest of the amount that doesn't have the ads so that we can watch this stuff without these ads, because it's just So I don't like ads, but here's the thing. If Amazon does it right, the company can make a lot more money by having ads in the content than it will if it's just, from the added expense that people are paying. And I think that that's always the kind of balance that they're trying to play. They know that enough folks are not going to pay. You see, if you make it too inexpensive, then you'll get too many folks that pay that extra $1.50 or whatever. And then it's not worth it because there aren't enough people on the ad. If you make it just enough, then only some people will jump to that. That means that, you've got more people watching ads and probably making more money that way. So I think ultimately I understand why a company is doing this. But I just got the notification that my Disney Plus subscription is going up. So now I'm thinking about canceling that, because I don't watch stuff on there regularly. It just kind of sits in the background. And I don't know, do you do any of the subscribe when there's something that you want to watch, like in a season, and then you unsubscribe afterward?
I think I'm going to end up doing that with Apple TV Plus, because I unsubscribed a few months ago, but I know when Severance season 2 comes out, I will be flocking and I will be watching that. And then I'll probably watch other things that I've been wanting to watch. But I know that's something that people talk about, where it's like, just wait until all the episodes of something drop and then just binge it all and then just have a 1-month subscription and then dip from there. So I also just don't have really the attention span to binge things. Really, I'm more of a watch one episode a day type of person, which is how I just bleed money with all these different subscription services. But I have found myself, with things for example, I got a Peacock subscription during Black Friday. It was $12 for the whole year. And you're like, okay, I'll do that. It's ad supported, but I spent $12 on it and I can handle ads while I'm watching Downton Abbey. It's fine. They're really annoying. They're really redundant, but it's okay, it's cheap, whatever. But things that cost significantly more, I don't know. Then my Netflix subscription too, the tier that I'm at is the $11.99 basic, which I know they're trying to get rid of because they want you to either pay $15 for the ad-free version or pay the whatever it is, $7, $8 for the ad supported, so that they can get your money there. But I'm going to have to do some serious thinking about what I'm actually going to keep.
Yeah, this is the first time, I think, for me in a while, I realize that is a privilege. I understand that I'm in a position where I have been able to have these subscriptions up to this point and not do too much thinking about it. But I am now at that point where I'm going to, sit down and look at what we actually are watching, what we're not, and make the decision of what stays and what doesn't, because it is now getting to be too expensive. But it also makes me wonder, in the words of a hero of yours, is it us? Are we the problem when it comes to that idea of temporarily subscriing to a service? Is that the issue, or is it perhaps something else that you've linked to here in your story of the week?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because a lot of these companies have been looking for ways to incorporate things like sports, where it's like you have to have this subscription if you want to watch. I think there was like for Netflix some WWE agreement that I don't know WWE very well, but I think they came to some sort of agreement where it's like you have to stay subscribed because it's something that continues throughout the year. So if you want to watch it, you're going to have to keep your Netflix subscription. We see a lot of other companies partnering up with other sports, and that's something that can appeal to people, so they don't keep their subscription for a month and then cancel. But I think it helps people to have like the lower cost every month. So you're like, okay, $6 a month feels a lot less painful than $15 a month. But then if you're already attached to something, like the thing I will never give up is I'm over here bashing Netflix for having $15 a month plan, but I willfully and happily pay my $15 a month for YouTube Premium because I do have a YouTube Premium account because I can't handle ads on there. That's something that I just will not give up. But I think it really comes down to them. They've also been toying with ways to I know Netflix especially played with the idea of releasing all episodes all at once with some shows, so that but then I think that backfires because again, you don't have people subscribing for longer periods of time as each episode drops. But I think it's just constantly they look to Netflix, we see what Netflix does and it does it well, and then everyone else does it. Yeah,
you're right about that. And looking at the industry here as a whole, it was just on Sunday, I was talking with Leo Laporte on our show, Ask the Tech Guys, and we were talking about the layoffs in media, or not in media, but in tech in general. Yeah. And it's one person who is an economist or understands all of the money of things, was asked about this, and he sort of said it's kind of a herd mentality, and that one company does it and it does well for the bottom line, and so even though the company's doing okay, other companies start to do that too because the one company's doing it. And so everybody, and we are seeing that. We saw one company decide to make that move, make that change. And then suddenly now the prices are going up everywhere. But you have to wonder if in the long run, this is going to impact individual, how many people can afford to, prop up these services with the little bit of extra money that they have in a month. And it's no surprise that you have folks sharing accounts, but that is kind of being changed across the board. I don't know about you, but I feel like that's going to that could be an eye-opener / shocking moment for streaming media, where cutting down on password sharing results in these companies actually going, oh, maybe we should have let that keep happening, because clearly you are, then nobody's getting it, right? I don't think that there are too many cases where someone who can afford it is just not paying for it. I know there are some cases, but I don't think there are so many that it is going to make a difference in the long run. I think it's just going to be, that one account maybe still existing because the parents can afford to, because they've already bought their house, but then the kids can't afford to buy their own. And so then there's no extra coming in. You're not growing the user base. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts on that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when Netflix started cracking down on password sharing, there was this general idea of, oh, this is such a stupid move. This is going to ruin them. Why would they do that? And then they saw just this record number of signups for people were flocking to get their own accounts because it's something they couldn't live without, right? Netflix has become a staple if you stream content, if you want to keep up with what's going on. And I think, that's fine. Okay, fine. Netflix wants to do that. It's not fine, but whatever. And then every other platform starts to do it. And then you think, well, that's not sustainable. Like, I can't get I don't want to get a separate account. We're constantly like, our family group chat is, what's the Hulu password again? And we all live in different places. And so there's gotta be a point where people just say, okay, well, I'm not gonna do that anymore. But then the other piece of that is, a lot of these platforms are thinking of, ways to kind of combine so that you have just one service because there's so many services. And maybe that's another way that they try to get you to be like, okay, well, you only have to pay for one platform now. Like, we're going to combine X and Y and you just have to pay for this one thing now. But they're going to do whatever works for them. And if suddenly we all decide we're not going to pay for it, then they're going to have to change something up.
They will. I am curious. I can't quite picture what that's going to look like, what changes they'll make other than just going all in on ads and just a very expensive tier that doesn't have ads. And I think what we're going to see is Netflix, Amazon, sort of seeing how well the ad-supported thing works for them. And if those companies start to make a good amount of money, then we'll see everybody else jump on board fully and wholly with that. And it could end up being that I have to spend a whole bunch of money if I want to get rid of the ads. So then I probably won't. So then I'll just have ads. And I mean, if that's the way of the future, I just really have something against it in movies. TV shows is fine, but I'm in the middle of the movie. There's a car chase happening, and then you cut into the car chase and tell me about some like rheumatoid arthritis thing.
Right.
It's like, I am pulled out of the film now. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. It's everywhere. We see it even on TikTok. I started noticing there's an ad countdown. And when I'm watching a video, I'll be like, ad starts in 3, 2, 1. I'm like, what? In the middle of my, like, what is happening? I mean, it's at the end, but it's still annoying. But yeah, ads everywhere. We just got to get used to it.
Ads in our virtual reality helmets as well.
Exactly.
Well, we will, of course, be kind of continuing to see how the streaming media industry shapes and reshapes itself to make more money. And up next, we'll talk about my story of the week, but I do want to take a quick break to tell you about Club Twit, twit.tv/Club Twit. If you'd like to skip the ads, well, join Club Twit at twit.tv/Club Twit. For $7 a month, $84 a year, you out there can join the club. When you do, you get every single one of our shows ad-free. So it's just the content, none of the ads. You gain access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show. Special Club Twit events get published there. We recently did an escape room in a box. I was dressed up as it was like a lady mermaid from the deep because it was around Halloween. So that's why. It was a lot of fun. You got to see that video. Great time. And then, of course, you gain access to the Club Twit Discord, which is a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit, as well as access to some Club Twit exclusive shows. There is Hands on Windows, a short format show from Paul Thurrott that covers Windows tips and tricks. Hands on iOS, or Hands on Mac, which is my show that covers all sorts of Apple tips and tricks. iOS Today, which is the show I co-host with Rosemary Orchard, where we talk all things Apple and mobile devices in particular. And Home Theater Geeks from Scott Wilkinson, which is a show all about the home theater. So much great stuff exists in the club, including our many, many club members. So join the wave, join the fun, join the excitement. Many listeners like you are there now. So get into that group and meet us there, twit.tv/Club Twit. Alrighty, time for my story of the week. This one comes from a regular on the show, Jennifer Pattison-Toohey of The Verge, who was writing about where Roomba stands now that the EU has said that Amazon cannot acquire the company. So I want to start with kind of the base story here, which is that Amazon made a play to acquire Roomba, the smart vacuum cleaner company. And of course, as is always the case, you have to go through regulatory hurdles whenever you choose to acquire a company, particularly if you play in that space. Amazon has been under scrutiny with the EU in many other ways and in many other sort of potential monopolistic practices. And so it's no surprise to see such attention being paid to the company. And ultimately, the EU said, if Amazon acquires Roomba, that is going to negatively impact the robotic vacuum marketplace. So because of that, Roomba is kind of reeling. It's a reeling Roomba. What I found interesting about this piece from Jennifer is that this kind of looks at how, even though on the face of it, it's good for, it seems to be good for competition, it could mean the death of one of the main competitors in the space, which is Roomba. So Roomba is huge. I didn't even realize this. Roomba basically invented and revolutionized the robotic vacuum marketplace. The company is responsible for being, if not the first, then the best creator of much of the technology that you now see across the board in all robotic vacuums. It was the first to figure out the auto-emptying dock so that you didn't have to follow your little robotic vacuum and clean out its little dustbin all the time. It was the first to do room mapping so that it wasn't just a robotic vacuum running into your foot over and over again, trying to figure out where it needed to go. It was the first to use AI algorithms to find that, this is a pile of waste from your animal that I should not run over and run around all of your carpets. And it is well known for its ability to actually do a good job of cleaning your space. iRobot, the makers of Roomba, have been at the forefront of putting in the work and, more importantly, putting in the research money to come up with the technology that now so many robotic vacuums have. And TWiT kind of suggests, Jennifer kind of suggests that because the company spent so much money on R&D leading up to this, that's kind of put it in this bad spot where the company is now operating at a loss. And all of the other companies who in some ways profited off of the research that iRobot did, they are now climbing the ranks, and it could lead to iRobot completely going away because they had counted on this cash infusion from Amazon. So I just think this is really interesting, and there's more to it that we'll get into, but I kind of was curious, Abrar, just in general about your thoughts on robotic vacuums first and foremost, and maybe if you had even thought about the amount of research and kind of innovation that iRobot itself had done outside of just making a little, DJ Roomba from Parks and Recreation.
Yeah. I was first introduced to Roombas when my brother got one back in, I want to say it was like around 2011 or something like that. And I remember it was like this magical thing, like how cool that a robot can clean your floors for you. But I noticed in this article, she mentioned that if your last experience with the Roomba was pre-2013, they've come a long way, which I'm glad, because that thing really was just, it did great, but it was just like bumping into all sorts of things.
Everything, yeah.
Everything. So it's really cool to have learned about that, about the amount of research that went into that. And I think the thing that's really tragic is, this juxtaposition between the amount of R&D that went into Roomba and everything that it's capable of doing versus kind of the flashy, like annual release from other companies that are just churning these things out. in order to get you to just buy the latest model, but maybe it's doing too much. And I think what was interesting to learn from this is the fact that, okay, yeah, maybe Roomba took a while to hop onto the like vacuuming and mopping combo, but that's because they thought it was better to keep those things separate because you could do one thing really well. But then in the end, you just kind of have to follow the trends. Okay, fine, we'll add this feature and that feature just to compete with these other brands. But I think it's just kind of symbolic of this entire shift when it comes to like buying anything, any type of appliance or gadget, where when you buy it, it's only going to last a certain amount of time because it's not made to last and it's not made to be amazing. It's just made to be flashy. And I think it's really sad that there could be this shift here with Roomba, if, it's able to survive, that, it will kind of follow the lead of all those other companies where it's like, we just got to release the latest model. Let's just throw something else in there and make it all flashy and people will buy it. And that's how we survive. But it's kind of just very telling of how things stand.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. You see that happening in so many different spaces where how does a television set itself apart? And the latest thing is to put AI somewhere into the system, and until the next big technology comes out, that's what it's got to do. And I have been some of these other brands that exist. I've been blown away by the number of Ecovacs, the number of different models of Ecovacs robots that it has, because it's like this one has this one you can talk to, this one has a special feature that will sing you a song. No, but there are just all these weird things that it's sort of spaghetti project-ish. And what I found interesting, and it really gets to the heart of what you're saying there, is I had tested a couple of Ecovacs robots, and there was one that was the super premium model where it had a built-in clean water tank, dirty water tank, and a built-in dustbin emptier. And so it would drive up and park the robotic vacuum, and it would empty out the dirty water and put down clean water, and then it would suck out the dust, and then it'd do its thing, and then it'd go back, and it had a fan built in, a heated fan that would dry the mop pads. And it had not only LiDAR atop the thing so that it could map the room, but it also had cameras on the front of it that were using AI to identify different objects and move around them. And I had the one that was the less premium model that did not have the clean and dirty water tank, but had a built-in sort of water tank that you'd click into it. And it did not have cameras on the front. It did a better job of not running into things that I didn't want it to run into than the more premium one that was supposed to have all of this AI built in that made it better. And so I remember running the bigger one, and it kept hitting the sides of my dog's bowls and knocking water all over the floor and kibble all over the floor. And so I immediately switched back to the one that was, the less expensive model, and that for some reason worked better. And I think that it really goes to what you're saying, that they had all these flashy features that were supposed to make it better, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually better. And it is such a good point too, that, if Roomba is going to stick around by having to try to play this game of what new features can we add, that's a bummer. I do wonder, because part of the reason that I think a lot of these other RoboVacs have been successful is that they don't cost as much as Roomba does. And so if there's a way that what this does is it makes Roomba have to come out with some more cost-effective models, then that is good. That is competition. That is something that serves, I think, the consumer. And then maybe the company still does get to focus in the long term on, we've got, it's sort of like, well, I'm not going to say Apple, because even Apple's least expensive device is still very expensive, but a company another consumer technology company where they've got the budget model, and then they've got the sort of mid-tier model, and then they've got the one that they put all the money into. And if you can afford it, it's going to be the best. It's going to do the coolest things. If that's a pivot that the company can do, which I've seen a Roomba pivot, so I know they can do it, then I think that there's success to be had there. I think you're right about that. I ultimately feel like no matter the robotic vacuum I use, they all are still to this day rather disappointing. And so as much of a smart home enthusiast as I am, I'm still not convinced by robotic vacuums in general and their usefulness, because I still feel it's like if you hire a cleaning service and then you clean before the cleaning service comes because you don't want the judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that way with the robotic vacuum, because I'm like, you're going to end up trying to suck up this dog toy. You're going to hit the corner of that dog bed and get it stuck in your wheels. So then I'm going around and cleaning up beforehand. And so I'm like, what's the point of this? I could just vacuum myself.
Exactly.
I'm sure there are some people who swear by them.
Yeah. Well, and also I was not really aware, like when I was reading this, I was like, all these other companies I haven't even heard of. And it's granted, I'm not as deep in this space really, but that really shows the power of a brand like Roomba. And, but I think there must be, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I wondered if that had gotten easier, the idea of like, I'll just let the robot do it and it'll know exactly what to do and I don't have to worry. And I wonder how much of it is us being like control freaks and how much of it is like,
because that's so true. It might be able to go around those things, but I'm not giving it the opportunity to disappoint me. I'm going in and cleaning it up anyway. And like I said, the one has done a good job. If you take the time, with the room mapping stuff, the cool thing is you can set sections that you don't want the thing to go into. And so where the dog's foods and waters are, I have little blocks there so it doesn't go there. And that works quite well. So again, over time, this stuff has improved. But I think the real test will be somehow making one that can go up and down stairs. That would be super cool.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. That'd be the coolest thing. I guess, the first step is making sure it doesn't fall down the stairs, which I hope it does better with now. And then from there, can it just slither down?
Oh no. Now that you've said slither, I take it back. I don't want this.
Like, how would that work?
Yeah, I'm scared now. I don't want to come into my house and the robots, like I set it so that when I am at home, don't go down the stairs because I don't want to see that.
Is it an intruder? Is it the Roomba? Is it something that's coming to kill me? I don't know, but
Who knows? It could be all three. Frankly.
It could be. Robots will attack us by being robotic vacuums down the stairs. Yes.
Well, Abrar, I want to thank you so much for your time today. If folks want to keep up with what you're doing, where is the place or are the places they should go to do so?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's my first name, last name, no hyphens, Abrar Al-Heeti, or on X, it's Al-Heeti_3. And you can catch my work at CNET.com as well.
Wonderful. Well, I will see you next month. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, folks, up next, I bet you can probably guess what we're going to talk about. It's time to talk about Apple's new spatial computing device. Joining us here to talk about their review of the Apple Vision Pro is Scott Stein of CNET. Welcome, Scott.
Hi.
Hi.
It's happy to be on.
Yeah, happy to have you here. So let's get right into it. You had the opportunity. You were one of many, a journalist who was able to check out. Oh, I shouldn't say many. It's sort of mini, a journalist who was able to check out the Apple Vision Pro. And I'm curious, do you still have the device? And have you been using it? Look at that. What's in his hands?
I do. I was thinking about wearing it to start, but I can put it on as we talk. So yeah, I have been using it, and but not all the time as my main computer. And that is because it doesn't fully hook into all the things that I need yet. And some of the interface things still need a little bit of polish and work. So, to me, that's what's going to make it a computer. By the way, here is I'm going to have to log in with my passcode. for the first time, or use Optic ID. So some things, so some things feel iPad-like or Mac-like, where it asks you to log in, enter your password after startup. It just updated to version 1.0.2. And I can see you right now through the pass-through, and you may not be able to see my eyes because they're very there right
subtle now
and dim.
Interesting. So I thought it was still waiting to kick on, but they're just it is so dark. I expected it to be brighter.
I mean, you can see my laptop, but exactly like it's so you look through to that, but it is so dark, and we found that really tough to photograph. A lot of ways it's something like that you haven't really seen in a display. It's lenticular, so almost like those 3D postcards, but it's designed to kind of be like dim and almost ambient. People called it like looking at my eyes through like muddy glass. So it's something very new, and is that better than not seeing your eyes at all? Potentially for contact, but it's not the same as actually having a pair of glasses.
Right. So let's kind of talk about this, because there have been so many reviews about this headset, right? And the reviews tend to start with, it does this really cool thing, it looks amazing, it does this awesome thing, and then at the end it tends to be kind of, but who needs this? What's this for? And I'm curious, when this product was announced and when you kind of learned about it to when you got to try it, and as you've been reviewing it, how has your opinion and your thoughts about the device and sort of the miracle of its technology, how has that changed over time? Has it stayed the same? Have you found it to be a lot more compelling than you originally thought, or has it lost some of its luster as you've used it more and more?
Yeah, and also I'm getting tons of Twitter notifications on this headset, so I'm going to take it off for a moment because it keeps beeping, and I didn't learn how to silence it. So the world of notifications in mixed reality is still a work in progress. But I would say, that has been kind of the reigning thought about this, and I've covered this space for a long time and worn just about all the headsets that are out there, and so I've kind of seen this future happening in slow motion, from the Oculus Rift to AR headsets, things like Magic Leap and HoloLens. I saw mixed reality with high-res displays in headsets made by a company called Vario back in I think it was pre-pandemic. So it was. These things are all like steps in a path. And so when I saw this headset, it felt like a synthesis of a lot of different things as opposed to a completely new thing. But I think that, you also see a lot of Apple polish and a lot of iOS and their computing ecosystem all folded in, and the ability to push and finesse the technology. So I guess what I'm saying is that I've been expecting a slow adoption on this for a long time. And so I don't think this product, I was not expecting it to kind of become something for everybody. Even so, I think that it is something until it proves out the full computer part, which is what they're calling it. I think that part is not ready for people yet in the way that they use things. Like, somebody asked me online, does it work with a mouse? It doesn't currently work with a mouse. It works with a trackpad. It works with a keyboard. The Mac connection for me was kind of going off and on, but that may be fixed in time for launch. But only one Mac display at a time, not multiple ones. And you can float iPad-like apps there. And a lot of the apps right now are 2D as opposed to the immersive 3D type, which are the things that if you're going to the people who work in mixed reality already, maybe doing sculpting or advanced 3D work, I didn't see a lot of sculpting or a musical instrument or creative tools right now, which I have seen in VR on things like the Quest.
Yeah.
So I think Apple has to, they kind of have to like work these pieces together and figure it out, but it's only day one or day -1.
Yeah, day -1. So let's go back to what you said. You said you can use it with a trackpad and with a keyboard. When you're saying that, you mean that an external physical trackpad and an external physical keyboard can be used with the device?
I was going to grab one, but it's like right out of the reach. Exactly. Okay. Magic keyboard, Magic trackpad is what I use. Curious compatibility with other things, but you can pair Bluetooth devices. Then again, I paired a Bluetooth Apple mouse and it did not work for input. So your mileage may vary there. And when you do that, it feels like what I felt with other types of VR headsets where you pair a keyboard and trackpad. You can do that on the Quest. It's nice that you can jump the cursor from app to app, and that's kind of like what you can do already on Mac displays or Mac to iPad, have the cursor jump across. But you have to get those accessories, right? Because to me, the hand element is not going to do everything for you yet. It's a lot of it is like a mouse or a trackpad where you're doing swipes and taps and pinches. It kind of reminds me of, the HoloLens did this too, where you had eye tracking and taps and pinches. That's fine for browsing, but if you're going to do really fine-tuned stuff, like to grab that little tiny thing, your eye has to be looking at that thing. And I found sometimes that was hard to do. Ooh. Also, for keyboards, you float a virtual keyboard, and no one has gotten better at conquering this yet. Meta also has this where you one tap per finger to tap on the virtual keyboard, or your eyes can pick the key and you can tap. But none of that's like really typing. You could dictate, but there are demonstrations, like Meta had shown a couple of years ago, typing on a desk just with your hands, and that it would somehow recognize that with machine learning. I'm sure that companies are trying to achieve that, but Apple hasn't gotten there yet either. So I would love that you could just not have anything, and we're not at that point. So it's like a middle step in this being able to be all your tools. So I've two questions. I'll start with this. One of the sort of right before the product was announced to be coming out, there was kind of a drumbeat among those of us who follow Apple tech, who suggested that this device was really a developer kit made available to the public. And there were some folks who said, no, this genuinely is a consumer product. This is something just like the first Apple Watch. This is something that is not going to look like the final version in the long run, but it is a product that's ready to go. I am curious, based on what you've said thus far, do you feel like it is truly a consumer product, or does it still feel like an unfinished thing that is mostly about getting into the hands of developers who will create those sculpting apps and the other 3D or augmented reality experiences? Apple's straddling a very fine line here, I think. And that's like what you're pointing out. Like when you look at a lot of these high-end headsets, the VR AR headsets in the past, they've gone to business and enterprise. HoloLens 2 was not sold as an everyday device. Magic Leap is, I'm not comparing Apple to Magic Leap in this regard, but there is something interesting in that the Magic Leap headset was launching as kind of a creator developer thing and also aiming at a mainstream market. Now, that was with not even having really any apps for it yet, or not very many. Apple's doing that type of a thing where it's going to be for developers and early explorers, and they're going to also have it in stores to buy. I think where they're going to get away with it and that it does work for the average person will be as a cinema. That part which they've been talking about, the quality of its display, and this is just an AV play, it's stunning. And to be able to play movies on this, it looks really cinema quality. And that's something that you don't see on any other VR headset right now. And that's you may see it more with micro LED technology, micro OLED technology. You might see it on future headsets, including maybe Samsung's later in the year. But I think that is a really unique feature, but who's going to pay $3,500
right.
for that? That is I feel like that's like a super high end, ultra luxury pair of headphones for your face. And then all the other things are interesting fringe benefits that are going to keep growing over time. The Mac part, or the computer part, the comparisons to the Mac or to Lisa or to how Apple developed its computers, I think there is an interesting analogy there because it's the beginning of a whole new interface and a whole new experience. But like most people didn't have the original Mac. So
right.
We're really at very early days, and I'm sure Apple, what's interesting here is that Apple versus other companies does a relentless type of iteration of their products traditionally, where they don't tend to give up and they tend to just keep going and going and going. If they do that, there's a lot of ways this could be refined down the road, I think. But, like Google gave up on VR with Daydream, and Microsoft got out of mixed reality really for the most part with a lot of their efforts. They're still in it, but like they changed path. And I think for Apple, it's like, are they in this for a really long game? And what's it going to keep evolving into? Maybe to glasses, at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that would be fascinating to see Apple fully pull out of a category after entering it, right? Because that's not something that's happened in a while. I guess the final question or final couple of questions I'll have for you here surround the actual usage of the device. One of the most common things I saw from folks who had the chance to try this on with Apple still there and then also afterward had to do with the weight of the device and sort of the longevity of usage. What has been your experience as far as that goes? Do you find it more comfortable, less comfortable than other devices other headsets you've strapped to your face? And does removing the battery from the headset itself help in any way? And maybe even that extra strap that they've added over time?
So I feel it's pretty equivalent to other headsets, and in that sense, I don't find it remarkably heavy, but it is a little heavier than the Quest 3. It's lighter than the Quest Pro, but that's without the battery. So the battery, which is like, 0.75 pounds, you're going to put that in your pocket or something. So the headset without a battery, it's heavy. I think it really depends on the strap you have. Apple included 2 straps, and that's interesting because it shows that there, in a way, isn't one perfect one. Though there's a single strap that's the iconic one that's like an easy on, easy off, but after about half an hour, it starts to feel top heavy. Whereas the other one, which is kind of like a CPAP strap or something, it's like this dual loop strap that is what I tend to wear. This balances the weight much better. This is something where I could wear it for longer. But it's very modular, which is impressive. It's very easy to detach and reattach things, easier than a Quest. And I feel like it seems obvious that they would design other straps and other accessories and maybe balance the weight better, do things like that. I think there's a lot of territory they could explore there. And I wonder if that modularity is going to allow them to evolve the headset in ways that we didn't expect with this generation, especially with the battery being separate. Maybe they'll find ways to integrate it in a band or things like that. I mean, technically, it's not impossible to make a battery strap thing. A lot of VR Air makers put the battery in the back, and you could do that and just have it lock in there. So I think it's not over with this first gen either. It just began. I think there's ways they could evolve this with accessories, with OS updates, with apps, and I would expect people buying this for $3,500 would expect that there would be a long life for this device that they buy. And I don't think they're going to be that quick to iterate to a second version. I think there's going to be a lot to explore with this version. So I think it's very interesting.
That's an interesting take that perhaps this specific version has a longer life than we expect. And any final things you want to say about it in terms of anything that surprised you, wowed you, disappointed you, or just seemed unexpected?
I mean, what wows me continuously is the fidelity of it. I think that's something that even people, I let a colleague look at it and she was saying like she's used VR as well. And it's just a whole level of detail immersion that I think is really impressive and it's hard to convey. And I think the eye and hand tracking begin to feel almost like telepathy. And then sometimes they don't feel like telepathy. Sometimes they're off the mark. And that can be distressing. So I think in using this, what I find fascinating is that I was losing myself in these worlds more, and yet also finding myself falling out of the flow of it. So I think that as I learn to use it, and I'm a seasoned VR person, I'm really curious how people find it hard to get on board or easy to get on board, and where the difficulties are. To me, that's like really interesting. And I want to see where Apple has these ways of things interconnecting. Like, what about the phone? What about the Apple Watch? Like, you should be able to sprout things that launch from the phone into the headset and throw things back and forth. And that's what I want to see. And recognize your room more. I think that's going to come, and fitness, like, because I use VR for fitness. I think those can come, but I'm really curious if they're going to come in this first, version 1 loop and how fast.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting. That'll be something to look forward to because, yeah, with all of our other Apple devices, they all play so well together in many ways. So it would be interesting to see more of that interconnectivity. Scott Stein, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Of course, folks can head to cnet.com if they want to check out the work you're doing. Is there anywhere else they should go to keep up with what you've got?
Yeah, you can find me on Threads at JetScott. You can find me on X at JetScott. Yeah, I believe I'm a JetScott at both. I'm around on Blue Sky, Mastodon occasionally, and you can always find me at cnet.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, up next, what do you do when you need the power of a data center, but you're in the middle of nowhere? Yes, a very fascinating conversation, but I want to take a moment to tell you, if you're out there listening and you are trying to make this year your brand's best year yet, well, you can meet your target audience with TWiT. For nearly 20 years, our audience, all of those folks out there listening, have remained the most successful group of individuals in the podcast world, whether it's CEOs, software engineering managers, and entire enterprises. All of TWiT's tech-savvy listeners contribute to our highly engaged audience with one-click purchasing power. 99% of our listeners stay tuned into most, if not all, of the podcasts they start. Yes, they listen all the way to the end, including our host-read ads. Why? Because our host-read ads, those ads that I read for the show, are indispensable parts of the show. Our expert hosts, hey, that's me, provide vetted information so our listeners always feel confident in making smart purchasing decisions. That's my job, to not only make sure that the product or the service that we're backing is something that I would genuinely back myself, but to make sure that what you are trying to tell our listeners, what you are trying to show our listeners, is what they get, what they hear, what they understand. So join the gold standard and partner with TWiT. You'll receive incomparable services that you can't get anywhere else. And I have to tell you, the continuity team here at TWiT is just incredible. The work that they do, the in-depth understanding that they have, just with you every step of the way. You'll get embedded host-read ads that are unique every time, guaranteed over-delivery on impressions, and plenty of other free benefits. Your ROI starts with us. So if that sounds good to you, if you out there are looking to market your service, your product, well, get in touch with TWiT, the leading podcast network. Email advertise@twit.tv today and secure your spot this year. Advertise at twit.tv. Thank you so much for considering being a sponsor here on the TWiT network. So, yeah, we've got to ask the question, what do you do when you are trying to get the full power of a data center, but you can't do it because you are nowhere near a data center? Joining us to talk about this, I think a fascinating story and something I had not considered at all, is Reed Albergotti from Semafor. Welcome back to the show, Reed.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, so I have to tell you, I never even thought of this, the story that you have in the first place. And so I'm curious, kind of tell us about data centers at the edge, but also tell us about what led to you doing this story in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, this story was about Armada, and they basically make data centers in shipping containers. And I talk to a lot of people every day, and there's always, I'm always getting pitched on these companies, but I thought that this one just was fascinating, as you sort of found too. Like, I had never really thought of this problem before. And you have these businesses where they are, and every business now, right, is a technology company. And it's really increasingly an AI company, including oil drilling, right? So you've got these remote locations where, oil rigs are out in the middle of the ocean, and they're getting just all this data, which in the past, kind of just in one ear out the other, because what are you going to do with all this data in real time? Now they have the ability to learn really insightful things using machine learning, deep learning, AI, large language models, whatever. But they need to be able to process it very quickly in real time. And you just can't do that because you don't have, you don't have a hardwired, 2 gigabit connection to AWS out in the middle of the ocean. And so you need to process it locally. So there's now this really interesting industry figuring out how to do that. And so this Armada is one company that is making a big bet on the fact that there's going to be this market, and they're putting GPUs inside shipping containers and sending them out to remote locations. And then they use Starlink, or it could be any satellite provider to kind of like keep it connected to the internet. But they're not sending the data to be processed, right? They're processing it locally and then sending the finished product out, to where it needs to go. So it's pretty fascinating. I agree. And we can go into more detail, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah. So this is the perfect time to talk about it. I am kind of curious, what are some use cases or case studies that the company brought up? Because I would think that for the most part, even in the middle of nowhere, you would just find some way to get an internet connection and do things the way that you always did them. So there have to be times where that's just not viable, and that you do need these data centers kind of dropped down, which is, again, just such a wild idea, because we think about like miniaturizing and speeding up and making things more mobile, and this kind of flies in the face of that. But once you hear about it, it's definitely a necessary technology. So yeah, can you tell us about some use cases for this?
The one that I focused on in this article is sort of future warfare. And if you think about the battlefield of the future, and of course, talking about war, I would say let's hope this doesn't happen. But part of military technology is deterring and stopping a war from happening, right? But the advantages are really going to be probably around autonomy, AI, and that doesn't just mean the ability to have a drone go and bomb a target on its own or something along those lines. I think it also means just being able to come up with insights for strategy and tactics in real time on the battlefield. And so I've read about some of these futuristic kind of sci-fi scenarios of a future war where you might have an AI telling you exactly how to carry out, a battle in real time, and where you should move the troops and all this stuff. Like basically being the chess player, sort of control. Like instead of the general, right? The Patton sort of moving the little guys on the map, right? It's like AI doing that. But if you think about it, like that's like an interesting sort of thought experiment and sci-fi scenario. But if you actually think practically, like, wait, well, what would you need to enable that to happen? There's an interesting picks and shovels stuff that needs to happen. And one of those is like, you're out in the middle of a desert or the mountains or wherever, like some place where you just aren't going to have a fast, stable internet connection that's going to be able to send, massive, like terabytes of data in real time all the way to some data center in, Oregon or wherever, to be processed. It's going to have to happen locally, and then it's all going to have to be like interconnected in some way locally without having to go all the way up to the cloud. And so you are going to have like basically a mobile internet data center backbone that is out there. And so this company Armada, like their idea is you'll have lots of these shipping containers out in these remote locations or battlefield or whatever, and they actually like act as a mesh network together.
Oh, cool.
So you're hopping like data is being processed in one location, and then it's sent around to probably some central location, but it can hop from like one shipping container to another. And so that's kind of how their idea of how you would make that futuristic scenario possible. I just thought that was so interesting. Again, like you said, something I hadn't really thought of, and was fun to kind of write about.
Yeah. And I understand the comparison I'm about to make is not incredibly accurate. So, folks, it kind of reminds me a little of gaming via the cloud, because what I'm doing, if I, for example, use Amazon's Luna, right? I locally have a controller and I have the game that's in front of me. But essentially what's happening is the things that I'm doing with my device are getting communicated to that server that's elsewhere, that's running the game on whatever system it's running on. And the only thing that needs to be sent to me is video. It takes out all of the other compute that is involved and just makes it so that all I have to worry about getting locally is video. So it takes a lot of the burden off of what you're doing. And throughout this, you kind of talk about the way that you can essentially take what would otherwise be huge amounts of data being sent over the cloud, and you run the risk of what if there's a storm that gets in the way, or an earthquake, or a tornado, or something else. Because you're having to send so much data, if that processing can happen locally, you can still send data to where it needs to go, but the processing has already taken place. So it's kind of like only sending a video stream as opposed to having to send all of that information over the web. I think that's fascinating. And in all of that, you did ask kind of, so does this, who's your competition? Does this make the cloud computing services the competition for something where they have these data centers at the edge? Can you talk about the response of this particular company? But I do feel like it would pertain to this specific little industry as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, all these companies, they don't want to say like who their competitors are, but I think they were sort of like, yeah, we think the cloud companies will be more like partners and we'll kind of fill in where they can't. He also said, I mean, all the cloud companies have these products these edge compute products that they have, but they're like not really focusing on that. So I think it's just one of those places where it's probably the cloud companies are probably their competitors, and maybe like, frenemies in a way, because you can never take on you're not going to be able to take on like these hyperscalers directly, but the way you do it is you find like a little space where they're not paying attention, and then you try to outcompete in that place where they're not totally focusing on it. And I think this is like one of those plays, but it's probably early, and like, I think if this picks up, I mean, there certainly will be competitors, and there is a question of like, well, how do you build that moat around this stuff, right? By nature, it's modular, it's movable, which kind of means it's like you could probably, it might be like interchangeable. So it's hard to see. I mean, I guess there's a moat in just if you can get like military contracts and things like that. And who knows what would happen in the private sector, but and there's definitely like a first mover advantage. But all this stuff is so unpredictable. Like, I think there are these huge questions about where this technology is all going to go, right? And maybe at some point, maybe there is like even satellite connections that are super stable and fast, and you don't even have to worry anymore. Like maybe it all just goes up to space, and you don't need the local stuff, and maybe there's data centers in space. I don't know, but yeah, it's just fun to think about. Like,
for sure. That's kind of why this story really stuck out to me. Is it's just, again, something I hadn't considered. What does one of these shipping containers actually contain? Do they talk about kind of the makeup of a shipping container, and what kind of companies, maybe outside of the military, are potentially using something like this?
Yeah, I mean, well, the oil drilling one is a real example. The containers are basically server racks. I mean, what you would find in a data center. And then in the case of, if you're trying to like run AI models, probably running inference on AI models, you're going to have GPUs in these things too. But I think that's kind of like the interesting, that you could put whatever you want in there, and the cost of these things could range from, $50,000 to like millions, right? Depending on like what you need to do with it. We know like GPUs are pretty expensive and hard to find these days. But yeah, I mean, I think if you just think of any industry that is happening in like that operates in remote locations now, like mining is probably a great example. Like they're just throwing off a lot of data now that they can actually use, and they're probably a customer,
right? Yeah, that makes sense. The opportunity for these to be moved around is what I think is the most compelling aspect of this. That maybe before, where you'd go to this random mining location and try to find some way to gain a connection to the data center that exists nearby, versus being able to just say, okay, let's boop, boop, bring this in, plop it down right here. I think that's a really compelling, potential use case for it. I guess the last thing that I'm kind of curious about here is, obviously when you ask a company that is working on technology that maybe there is a future where we wouldn't need this necessarily, the company is going to suggest that there's always going to be a need for this. But yeah, how did the company respond to the idea that one day there would be a whole network of satellites potentially that could connect everybody across the web, and maybe there's not a need for this? How do they still see the use case for something like this in a world where everything's just all networked together?
Yeah, I mean, I think they acknowledge that it's like, this is a risky bet, right? And they're making a huge, like any really kind of interesting startup, it's a risky bet. Like most of them fail. So I think they acknowledge that this is an early bet on one potential future. But, I think they feel it's pretty confident that this is still going to be a need. Like the space is not going to move quite fast enough to be just a stable, hugely fast connection everywhere all the time. I thought actually one thing that we didn't really talk about too, that I'd love to get your thoughts on, is like, there's a lot of talk about regulating AI development and like, what you have to do if you're building these large foundation models. And it makes me think, well, if you can have these data centers out in the middle of the ocean, right, in international waters, like how do you regulate this stuff? Like it's, you could literally just be beyond the reach of any government.
Oh my goodness. It's pirate radio, but it's pirate I don't even know what to call it. Wow. I had not considered that. Yeah. Suddenly, sure. Oh man! Now that there are multiple. What am I trying to say? Like governments that around the world are probably thinking exactly that. Yeah, because if you can put the whole data center that is bringing some country to its knees by doing denial of service attacks or whatever it happens to be, but it exists in a space that isn't regulated. Oh my! Wow.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing.
Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just like these models that, I mean, people are talking about making a size limit on AI models, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, who knows, like maybe you couldn't really make a data center big enough to run some huge, to train some gigantic, like
perhaps with quantum computing,
thing. Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Totally.
Yeah. Suddenly you've got these little things that can just pop up wherever, and it's super powerful AI that does whatever it is you want it to do, and no one can really stop it because it exists in there's no laws in that space. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we need to go shut this company. No, I'm just kidding. Wow. I hadn't considered that. Huh.
But it's not even, to me, it's like not even like, it's dangerous, but it's like it should sort of, I don't know, maybe inform how we think of regulation, right?
Absolutely.
And like how we want to, how do we want to like ensure that this stuff is safe? Maybe just coming up with a law isn't quite enough. Like maybe we need to actually try to get ahead of it, get ahead of it by being first to develop it, right? Being first to develop these new techniques. So I don't know. I'm just totally spitballing here.
No, I appreciate. I think that adds to the conversation, frankly, and it opens up new ways of thinking about this, and that's what we need to be doing anyway, given how quickly AI is moving and how quickly our laws and regulations have been shown to fall behind that. I mean, even in things as simple as the AI generated pornographic images and just recently some sort of regulation trying to pass because Taylor Swift was involved in it. She was not involved in it. People involved her in it. And
somebody used her image.
Yes. Yeah. To be clear. And so that, you're right that there's so much of this that we are really falling behind. And I think we as humans thought that tech was moving fast before, and that we needed to catch up when it came to just the way that computers have sped up over time and how much, has changed there. That doesn't even come close to what we're seeing in terms of generative AI and how quickly that is speeding up and changing the way that we're doing things. And so I think this is going to be a big year for that. And I will certainly continue to check in over on Semafor with your work and what you're covering there. Of course, folks can go back and watch our conversation about your predictions for AI for 2024. And thank you for your time today. If folks want to keep up with what you're doing, of course, they can head to semafor.com. Is there anywhere else they should look?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'd love for you to sign up for our free newsletter, which comes out Wednesdays and Fridays, and is full of just sort of interesting tidbits and a good meaty article twice a week. Put your email address in on the website, and then I'm on X and Threads and those things. Just at my name, but would love to hear from you. Love to hear from readers. So. Get the newsletter, respond to it, send me an email. It's always great to have those conversations.
Wonderful. Well, Reed Albergotti, thank you so much today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
Alrighty, folks, Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That's where you can go to subscribe to the show. Very important in audio and video formats. twit.tv/TNW. When you head there, you'll see buttons to subscribe to audio or video. If you'd like to get all of our shows ad-free, I mentioned Club Twit, twit.tv/ClubTwit, $7 a month, $84 a year. We also have individual show plans if you'd just like to get a specific show completely ad-free. If you'd like to follow me online, you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active. And of course, check out later today, both Hands on Mac and iOS Today, if you're part of the club. Those shows publish on Thursday. You can also watch Ask the Tech Guys on Sundays. That's the show I co-host with Leo Laporte, where we take your questions live on the air and do our best to answer them. We always have such a great time bringing that show to you. So please tune in there, and thank you all for tuning in to Tech News Weekly. I will be back next week with the wonderful Amanda Silberling of TechCrunch for that, the second Tech News Weekly of the month. And I suppose it's time to say goodbye.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here. In case you hadn't heard, Home Theater Geeks is back. Each week, I bring you the latest audio-video news, tips and tricks to get the most out of your AV system, product reviews, and more. You can enjoy Home Theater Geeks only if you're a member of Club TWiT, which costs $7 a month, or you can subscribe to Home Theater Geeks by itself for only $2.99 a month. I hope you'll join me for a weekly dose of home theater geekitude.